Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. How do you take something that many kids dread and turn it into a thing that they beg to play after school? That's the question that today's guest, Sophie Silver, co-founder and CEO at Polymath, set out to solve through her learning game, Polymath. It's more like Roblox than a traditional math class, and through play, kids get real math skills. It's in many schools all around the world, with tens of thousands of kids using it, and recently raised a seed round to take the idea to the world. To chat the story, the idea behind it, and what's next, Sophie joins us now. Thank you for being here.
Kia ora, it's great to be here.
Hey, such a cool concept. It'd be really cool to kind of go back and hear about, how you got into the idea of making a game that was also teaching kids math skills.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think about it quite a lot, actually. So I was studying at UCL in London. I was studying a mixed degree, but one of my key passions was psychology, specifically kind of human learning and memory and developmental psychology, so how the brain develops and grows. And at the same time, I was a part-time nanny. Great gig, loved it. But I was running from kind of the lectures on psychology to the school gate to pick up kids. And I was listening to them tell me about their day and what they were learning at school. And it kind of reminded me of all the qualms I've ever had with the education system since I was a kid. So I was one of those kids at 16. And actually, I went to school with my co-founder, Christian. And we would often discuss how standardized testing doesn't work and how it's really frustrating that school will work for one kid and not another. And so it's always been something that we're really passionate about. It's always been something we've cared about. I think the spark for Polymath was probably when we were like 13 or 14 is when we realized that we really cared about the space. But being a nanny, it reminded me. And I was studying this subject at the same time. And I was seeing how kind of there's a misalignment between how we learn via our brain and how the school system works. And it's kind of a function of just practicality, what we can manage to do with the system that we have. And then at the same time, I was having a lot of kids that were really struggling with maths. And it was maths in particular. And the language was really strong. It was really emotive. So it was like, I hate maths. I don't want to do maths. I really don't like it. It was something that you could tell they kind of were fearful about. And I was like, that's not good. I don't like that. That's not a fun time. You shouldn't be scared about getting something wrong. You shouldn't be scared about learning something. And all of those things kind of coming together is what made Christian and I realize that we wanted to tackle this problem. And so we started. We were living in London, and I was finishing up my degree. We started talking about it. And it was really I'd say a couple of years of discussing it and being frustrated by it and figuring out all the intricacies of the issue at hand before we ever really started writing code.
And it's such a cool insight, right? That, kids love to build things in Minecraft and they construct these imaginative open world kind of like playgrounds. And if you could, they're doing math, they're thinking about shape and space and, how to add things, right? But it's not actually teaching them traditional math skills. So how did you come to kind of go, this is the forum, this kind of gameplay? And yeah, explain to us, what the kind of like forum is.
Yeah, so Polymath is an open world where you're a character and you run around. There are NPCs, non-playable characters that are on the island, and you can interact with them and fulfill their needs. At the moment, it's a very small subset of what we want the full app to be, so we're still building it. But you can build buildings and you can interact with characters, you can buy things, you can change your avatar and make it look really cool. And so it's very reminiscent of a lot of the games that kids love. A lot of these things are very present in Roblox games or Minecraft. And it really gets kids excited. Kids love playing games. They love being creative. they really enjoy that kind of play, and it's something that they're doing a lot of the time. And so we really wanted to meet kids where they're at. If we want to build a education app and we want to make an impact on kids, there's no point trying to force them into another space, trying to get them to come to a physical space or get them to do something that they're not used to, or maths books or whatever it is. We need to meet them where they're at so that we can make the biggest impact. And so it became obvious to us that building a game was the way forward. I guess additional context is my co-founder and partner, Christian, he's been building games since he was like 11 years old. And we have 9 nieces and nephews. So we have a lot of exposure to what kids find fun and exciting. And I think it was just like a natural, okay, this is where kids are. This is what kids enjoy. And we want to make a difference. So let's put the learning back into the games, because our opinion is that these games are inherently mathematical, are inherently learning based. And we kind of strip out a lot of it to make it smoother and easier for kids to play. What if we put it back in?
That's interesting. Yeah, tell us about that, because I mean, the thing that I always, when my kids show me what they've made in Minecraft or Roblox, that garden game that's going off at the moment, the first thing you always go is like, wow, did you really make all this? You know, like, because it is quite spectacular, the amount of what they do. But I think, like, you know, part of that is it is so self-directed, and then you can do whatever you want. And if I think back to the learning games that I've experienced, there's like, they're pretty binary, right? Like, you're either learning or it's a game, and it always feels very artificial when the learning bit pops up.
Yeah, and I think it's a hard thing to balance, right? Because you do want to make sure, well, you kind of have to make sure that you're getting kids to learn. You have to measure it and you have to test it, because we are a learning game. And there's an element that rote learning can be really useful. So having kids practice questions kind of in a flashcard format, that's really good for our brains and for memory. But I think the key problem that we're actually tackling is motivation. And that's very clear for us. You know, like, there are incredible teachers out there. There are incredible learning resources out there. But the problem that we're really focused on is getting kids engaged with maths. You know, how do we get kids who are scared of maths, who have maths anxiety, whose brains freeze when they see a maths question? How do we get them engaged in maths? And so making sure that it's familiar and fun is really important, and not being secretive about the learning. You know, all the kids that play Polymath know it's a learning game. But having learning built in and integrated into the experience is important for us. So an example of that is we have an unreliable shopkeeper. She's the sister of the reliable shopkeeper, and she just gives you the wrong answers all the time. And you can correct her. You can say, actually, that's incorrect. This is the deal that I want. She also gives you the wrong answers in a very helpful way, where you get discounts. And some kids are starting to catch on to that. And so they'll like wait for her to give them an incorrect answer that's a really good deal. And it's things like that. Like, the kids are clearly doing the maths. They can correct someone. They can finish the equation, answer it correctly. But it's relevant because it's part of the game and it's part of their goal. The same with building. If they want to build a house, they need to measure things and order materials, because that's what you need to do when you build a house. And so making learning more relevant and integrated into the gameplay, I think, is really powerful for the kids that struggle and for the kids who don't.
What kind of things do you do to help kids have a positive story? You know, like you say, those words around the fear, and also that story you tell yourself, like, I'm not a math person, I'm not a numbers person, which, you know, if you can change that trajectory, that's so huge for people in their lives.
Yeah, it's and it's a really inherited thing, maths anxiety and a maths brain. It's kind of, once you hear someone say they don't have a maths brain, it's like, oh, well, do I have a maths brain? Well, I got that answer wrong. Maybe I don't. And it's quite crippling because it is so binary. It's I either do or I don't. And the reality is there's no such thing as a maths brain. There are kids that really struggle, and we're not talking about neurodiversity here, but in general, kids, there's no such thing as a maths brain. Every kid is capable, but they move at different paces, and they struggle with grasping different topics. And so I think one of the ways that we really manage that is through our adaptive algorithm. So Polymath gives personalized questions to every single child. So if you're sitting next to another kid, you're not going to get the same questions because you're not at the same place. And so what that means is students get the right questions at the right time for them. They're being challenged to the right extent, but they're also getting that feedback that they are doing well. you know? So it doesn't matter if you're in year 3 and you're still at year 2 maths. You'll get year 2 questions and you'll get some of a challenge, and it makes kids feel a lot better about it. It builds their confidence, and they can sit in the same class next to a kid who's really, really good at maths, and they can still have that positive experience. They're not getting everything wrong. They're getting learning at the pace that is right for them.
How did you go about taking that insight and you and Christian build out the actual first version of the app?
Yeah, it was a really fun early journey. We had just moved back from the UK to Auckland, and it was kind of mid-COVID in the UK. So we kind of took a breather, and we just shipped really early. Like, the initial version of Polymath that kids played with was so ugly and so buggy, but it gave us such quick insights into what works for kids and what doesn't. It gave Christian really great insights from an engineering perspective on what kind of the key challenges would be and where he needs to focus. And it allowed us to test with real users really quickly. And that was kind of it. It was just getting something out as quickly as possible and getting into the hands of kids. I will also say we have an exceptional engineering team who are also very design-minded. So it's very easy for us to go from a kid complaining about something in a class or having some feelings or having a problem, and us being able to iterate on that really quickly because we have a really good team.
How did you go about getting it in the hands of kids in the first instance?
New Zealand is an amazing country. We have a massive high trust environment. It's very safe. And so what we did is we actually contacted one of our old school teachers from school. So we just went through our list of all our school teachers we could remember. And it turns out that Christian's year 7 teacher was a principal at our local primary school. And so we got in touch, and it's this amazing thing in New Zealand where you get in touch with someone you haven't talked to for like a decade. And they're like, yeah, I love what you're doing. I'll help you out. And that's how it started. You know, graciously, she brought us into the school, and we were able to work with a class and give the kids the early versions of Polymath, which they loved. The teachers then got to trial it and give us feedback. So we were able to make something that really suited teachers as well. And yeah, we just asked.
That's so cool. And from that, how did you spread to other schools? Because by the time you did your raise, I saw you were in maybe half of all New Zealand schools, right? And that's wild. as if there's one place that's hard to sell into, right? And I know it'll be really interesting to talk about, what selling is like when you're not charging. But, it's really hard to get access to places like schools with new technology or new tools.
Yeah. Again, we just asked. It was that simple, and we asked a lot, and we made a real effort to make Polymath actually something that is useful for teachers in the classroom. So, we weren't trying to go in there and change the way that they were learning. We spent a lot of time with teachers understanding what would help them in the class and desperately trying to help some of those issues that they were having. But we would just email teachers. We would say, hey, we're Kiwi. We've got this app. Would you be willing to try it? And so many of them were. And that's kind of how we grew in Aotearoa. We just asked, and teachers were really happy. They were also really happy to help and give us feedback. And I think that was really important. The teachers in New Zealand were so impactful with giving us early feedback on what was working and what wasn't.
What stage is Polymath at now? How many countries are you in and how many users? And you're saying that you're still building out the app, but there's a full little world that's kind of in use right now, right?
Yeah. Christian often says the app will never be finished because it's one of those things that we're just going to keep wanting to expand. So New Zealand and Australia are a very big market for us, as is the US. We also have usage in the UK and Canada, and we have some in Spain and France and some kind of odd areas. I say odd because it's an English language, as in we don't have a translation at the moment. And yeah, we started in New Zealand and expanded to Australia. That wasn't too difficult. The culture is very similar in a way. Teachers are really helpful and they're really keen to at least listen to what we're doing. And then we started kind of growing in the US, which was kind of a mixture of We did some paid advertising just to get our name out there. And again, emailing teachers and just saying like, hey, would you be willing to try this? The fact that it's free is really helpful because teachers often don't have budget or aren't in control of their budget. And so taking that stress out there for them can be a big selling point, and they're willing to give it a go in their class with their kids. But yeah, that's it.
Tell us about that financial model, right? So is it free for kids and teachers? And how does the thing make money, or does it make money?
Yeah, we're pre-revenue at the moment. So the short of it is that it doesn't make money right now. So we will never charge for maths content. We will never charge for educational content. Our intention is for that to always be free. And so the school version, because there's very limited gaming in the school version, that is free. Our goal is to be able to offer basically an alternative to pocket money for parents. So for parents who spend kids or who give kids pocket money via Roblox or via kind of Fortnite passes or whatever it is, we want to give parents an alternative for a game that is educational, for screen time they can feel really good about, right? So we already know this is a massive trend with lots of parents and kids engaging in this way. Kids really want to spend their pocket money in this way. And so we want to be able to offer kids upgrades on their avatars. Whatever they really want. We don't want to ever limit kind of gameplay and maths content, but if there's a way where we can get kids more invested because they're like, Mom, look, I want to play this more because I have this really cool hat now. That's kind of the road that we're going to be going down, that we're going to be pursuing. But yeah, we're pre-revenue at the moment, so still thinking about it.
That's so cool. Let's come back in a moment and talk about how you build out a business that has backing and such, loyal users without revenue so far, the journey ahead, and how you're tracking the progress of kids as they learn. Just before the break there, we were chatting about building out the network before monetizing it. And that is such a cool thing in the local New Zealand ecosystem, right? As we have heaps of B2B software companies that get revenue and then raise off the revenue to get to another revenue target. And that's something I think a lot of people are really familiar with. But the approach you've taken is much more similar to like a, build a massive audience and then find ways to monetize, big consumer play, more like a social network or a big kind of typical American VC kind of play. How did you go about building the support and getting the backers to take that approach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of it comes from answering the question, what is the hardest problem to solve for us? And so in our space, the hardest issue is not necessarily revenue. It's questions around, can we build an app that gets kids to learn? Can we build an app that kids find enjoyable? Can we grow that? Can we reach children? Can we reach enough children to make an impact? And those are the tricky questions. If we can answer those questions and we find really mission-aligned investors, the system works. And so we were really dedicated in the first year or so into making sure we answer those questions. Are we actually creating an app that improves kids' learning outcomes? Yes, we are. Are we building an app that kids want to play? Yes, we are. And finding mission-backed VCs actually in New Zealand was not difficult. Blackbird and GD1 were incredible and really got where we're going with this.
That's so cool, as it is a very rare story in the local ecosystem. But so obviously, the mission is so important and, the traction, the fact it's working there. Tell me about that mission and how that guides the work you do and the people you partner with.
So our mission is to make kids confident with maths. And when you break it down, the key thing that we believe that's holding kids back from being confident with maths is the engagement and motivation piece. So that's where we're focused at the moment. That's very clear in our head, and that drives everything that we're doing. So the question, we almost wake up every day, every week, it's like, what is the thing that will move the needle on that? And it's also a sense of impact. So it might be, at the time, we might be like, okay, this is working well for the kids that we have. We want to make an impact to more kids. So now we're focused on increasing our impact. Sometimes it's, okay, we can make a bigger impact. We can get more kids. We can get the kids that we have to learn more. Let's improve our algorithm. Okay, we can get kids to practice in a more impactful way. Let's improve the game world. And so that mission kind of drives the direction that we go at. It's a mission that a lot of people care about, actually, when you start talking about it. Everyone's had an experience at school with any topic, but quite often with maths, where it didn't click, or they felt embarrassed, or they struggled. People worry about how their kids are going with education. It's a topic that's really close to a lot of people's hearts, and a lot of people care about it. So finding people that are engaged with the mission is actually not very difficult. And yeah, both of Blackbird and GD1 were exceptionally excited by making an impact in this space. And prior to that, Startmate and Phase 1 were the two kind of startup communities that we've been a part of. And they also really cared about the mission, I think, especially because it's so user-focused. We're really close to our users and we really care about them. And it means that it's very hard for us to stray off. We can't go down tangents because we're always thinking about how we're going to help these kids.
Yeah, and games are such a great forum, right? Because I think, like math, it has a really bad kind of marketing to it, right? Like, because so many games are the things that make maths exciting, which is like, maths is like points in space and volume and shapes and the interrelatedness of all those things. It's not just numbers and algebra and the things that people might, or formulas, right? Like, and so many games make use of speed and rate of play and shapes and all of those kind of cool bits about it, but it's not obvious it's a math game. So how do you balance that kind of getting the math in while still being something that's really enjoyable?
Yeah, we have two approaches to this. So we have, just so that we know that kids are learning, we have flashcards, and kids practice those and they get something called brain power, and then they can use that brain power. It's kind of an exchange, a transaction there. But we also have what we call integrated maths, which are parts of the game where, as kids engage with them, as they do their projects, as they build buildings, they're asked maths questions. And that takes a lot longer to build out. It's a lot more engineering and it's a lot more design, and so that's a bit slower. And so we balance out these two. So we can put flashcards in really quickly and make sure that kids are practicing maths, and then we kind of use that to buy our time and build out some of these features. And now we're at a point where we have quite a few of these features, and kids, as they play, they're just answering maths questions, and they kind of don't even think about it. We never want to hide the fact that we're a learning game. I think kids should know that they're going to be practicing maths when they play Polymath. That's kind of the point. But they don't really feel it. And we've had experiences where we've kind of had a maths question on a workbook in front of a kid, and their brain has gone blank. They're unable to answer it. The same question has come up in Polymath, and they're like, oh yeah, I know the answer.
What surprised you about the way that kids or teachers or parents, have used Polymath or have engaged with it?
Yeah, I think kids do some weird stuff, hey? Like, one thing we didn't expect is that kids will come onto the island and they need, like, trees and the resources around to progress. Kids get on and they just cut down all the trees before they do anything else. And it's like, no, we need you to interact with other parts of the game. And so very early on, a lot of these kids were hitting these fail modes where there were just no trees on the island and there was nothing that they could do. And we were like, oh no, that's not good. So we changed that. So they do surprise us. They do some weird things. One experience I remember very early on, I didn't anticipate, is the amount of violence that kids wanted in the game. And I was really shocked by that. And I'm not surprised in hindsight, but we had these cute little non-playable characters that ran around our island, and they just wanted to hurt them. I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
That shifted when we changed kind of some of the incentives and what the characters were asking for, and how the kids interacted with them, and it kind of went away and dissipated. But that's kind of one of the reasons why getting our product shipped as quickly as possible and iterating and testing with real kids is really important, because we just get that feedback really quickly and we can make tweaks and changes and test it.
Yeah, because I imagine, those resource-based games, it's very extractive and it's very transactional and it's not very much in keeping with thinking about holistic ecosystems or positive worlds, right? And it always buzzes me out when I see like the little cute sheep being maimed in Minecraft. Like, it's not very nice. And so with that pre-seed round, what has that unlocked and what are you working towards as a company at the moment?
Yeah. So for us as a software company, funding unlocks talent. It allows us to grow our team. And so it was just me and Christian, and now we have two amazing engineers. They are old uni friends of Christian, so we're very lucky to have them on board. They're incredibly talented, and they're based in the UK. And so they help us build out the game world. They're exceptional. And going forward, that's it. Every step is just increasing kind of the team and working towards our goals. And I think, we'll know Polymath is successful when two things happen. The first one is when we see household harmony. And so what I mean by that is at the moment, kids come home and they'll say, can I play Roblox? Can I watch YouTube? Can I whatever? And parents will say, yes, after you've done your homework. There's a kind of transaction there. And it can cause a lot of tension in a household. And what we're trying to work towards is a world where kids say, Mum, can I play Polymath? And they're like, yeah, you can play Polymath. It's screen time that parents can feel really good about. And then the other way that we'll know that Polymath is successful and what we're working towards is that global maths attainment will increase.
It's so interesting. And that kind of idea of harmony is really interesting. As YouTube especially, there's so many people like juicing the algorithms, and working on every single part of these videos to get the reactions, to get people engaged. But it's very, like, that kind of content is very superficial, very sugar hitty, right? And obviously there's a big breadth of good content on YouTube as well. Yeah. But a lot of these, very popular things are quite manipulative and not really harmonious at all, right?
Yeah.
And then you see your kids and they're kind of like talking as if they're in like a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, everything, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then in terms of like the next steps, you've got great presence in New Zealand and Australia, some of the team in the UK. Like, where does this go? Like, where do you have to go as a team, or where is your big focus?
At the moment, we're focused on reaching as many kids as possible. And so the obvious market to start with is the US. And we've been working on growing our presence there, both in schools and at home. And that's our key focus. We also have a bunch of kids in the UK using it as well.
What's your philosophy on screen time? As I saw some interesting stuff in the Ray's communications saying that, kids might spend hours a day on screens, but only minutes on educational games.
Yeah, it's a very sad statistic. So the average 8-year-old outside of school will spend 4 to 5 hours a day on screens. And on average, 6 of those minutes are used on educational apps. And so what we're trying to do is steal time from that. It feels like we're kind of reaching a maximum. There are only so many hours in the day, and we want to steal some of that time back for education in a way that really still aligns with kids, in a way that kids really want to do it. We don't really have like a big goal for that number. We don't need it to be 2 hours or 4 hours. We don't want kids to be spending lots and lots of time on screens. So we actually really are on board with parents who can afford to and want to decrease screen time. I think that sits in harmony with what we're trying to do. But our mission is to give parents and kids better alternatives to screen time, basically.
The coming together of psychology, looking after and caring about children, computer science is a great combination with you two as co-founders, right? What advice would you give to people who do see an opportunity like this and want to go out and solve something like this?
Talk to users. As early as possible, talk to the people that you want to help. Talk to the people that you want to make a difference for. They will give you everything that you need to know. Kids have all of the answers for us. They, as a collective, they know exactly what they enjoy and how they learn. They can't articulate it to us. It's something that we have to test and we have to work with them and we have to learn and understand. But our users have all the answers. And so the more time that you spend with your user, the better your product's going to be, the better you're going to be able to help them.
At what stage did you kind of know that this would work?
This is a really good question. I wonder if it's actually before we touched code. We had an inkling because so Christian's always made games. I worked with kids and I used to invent games to help them learn maths. When they were really struggling and they wanted me to do their homework for them, I'd be like, no, let's make this fun. And so I think, and I think this is something that teachers already know as well. This is something teachers do and parents do. And so I think we always had a strong confidence, and maybe that was really naive, but we did, that a learning game would work. And then I think we were just naive about the rest of it. And I think that worked in our favor. And so we kind of just went into it thinking, we can do this. There's something here and we want to try and make a difference. And we will figure it out as we go. And I think that that's what we've been doing, basically.
It's so cool. How can people get involved?
If you have kids or if you're a teacher, give it a go and give us feedback. That is the most helpful thing that anyone can do for us. Yeah.
And if you're kids, do kids get themselves on board or are they introduced to it or yeah?
Yeah. You can download the app on the app stores. You can even just go to the web browser. You can go to Chrome or whatever and jump on, make an account. If kids are listening, feel free to jump on Polymath.
Huge kid listenership to Business is Boring. And as a kind of final thought there, like you've talked a little bit about success for Polymath. What will success be for you?
For me personally, for Polymath to win, for us to make an impact. And I think to some extent, Polymath already doubles the learning rate of kids with maths. So if we compare kids that use Polymath regularly to kids who don't, the kids who use Polymath regularly have twice the learning rate. And so I already feel really excited by that. But if we can get to a point where we're seeing maths attainment increase and we're helping kids get excited to learn, that's huge. That's everything.
It's so cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing, some of the journey so far, and can't wait to see where you take it next.
Thanks so much.
So cool. Thank you so much to Sophie Silver, co-founder and CEO at Polymath, that you should jump on and check out. Thank you very much for having us along and listening. And thank you to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Aihe Butler. If you do like what we do, please do rate and leave a review. It really does help. E nohora.